everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Eden Mabon of LightCycleAstrology.com. I hope you're doing well out there. Today we are taking a look at Mercury's trine to Mars. This aspect has been forming in the sky since very early Monday morning and is perfecting today about 5 p.m. Wednesday, and is going to be separating out for the next 3 days. So all in all, this transit is lasting about 6 days. That's when you will feel the energy most prominently in the first 3 days, peaking today, and then you'll still feel it after that. But I wanted to get this aspect in this week's content before it peaked out. I didn't have time earlier in the week to do it, but we're going to take a look at that today, and I'll give you some archetypal things that I would do with this energy a little bit different today in terms of just the themes archetypally or the symbolism or the meaning of the transit. I want to give you some actionable things that you can do since we are talking about a Mercury trine to Mars. So before we get into today's astrology, I'd like to mention that this channel is supported by my consultation service at lightcycleastrology.com. We are looking for new clients for 2023. So if you're interested in a consultation or would like to become a client, please contact me on lightcycleastrology.com. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Okay, let's go ahead and pull up the real-time clock and take a look at this trine. Now, it's perfecting today right around 5 p.m. We see that Mercury and Mars are both at 16 degrees in their respective signs. Perfection just means that there's exactly 120 degrees apart between the two planets, and that is where we get that trine nomenclature, because we're talking about if you take 360 degrees, a circle, and divide it 3 times, you get that 120 degrees. So that's why mathematically it's called a trine. But one of the underlying fundamental principles as to, in modern astrology, usually we all know that trines are like good and we want them and we're happy when we see them forming. But why is that? Well, you could actually find the answer to that from traditional astrology practice, because in the ancient world, the ancient astrologers were using a device called the Thema Mundi that places the domicile lords of each planet in their home temples, and from where the temples of the lights are situated. One thing that happens is if you count back 4 signs from the moon's temple here, you see that we get to the sign of Pisces. So that's 4 signs back. That's 120 degrees back to Pisces from the moon's temple, one of the lights, and from the sun's temple, the other light. If you go forward 4 signs or 120 degrees, you get to Sagittarius, which is Jupiter's other temple. So we have the trine being related by this degree back to both of Jupiter's temples. So that is the reason that it gets this association with being kind of like good or positive, is because Jupiter was said to be the greater benefic in ancient astrology. So right off the bat, we know that this is a really good aspect because it has that Jupiterian kind of energy to it. And what that means essentially is that Mercury, being in that superior position to the right of Mars, is going to be the one that is dominating the exchange of information. But the testimony, we know, oracularly speaks to something that is more positive. So Mercury might be giving Mars some information on how to do something. It might be that Mars wants to take some action, get something done, do something. And lo and behold, here comes this information that allows that process to take forth. So you see that form of support through the Jupiter kind of aspect that is being shared between the two planets. Or it could be that you find some good news or even some money to help you do something. It could be that somebody that has a Mercury kind of quality is trying to help you do something. So there are different ways in which you could see this come about. But generally speaking, it's a good aspect because Mercury isn't in a place that he is in poor condition or he's not being maltreated by a malefic planet or something like that. So Mercury is in good condition here, giving positive testimony to Mars. So generally speaking, this is a really positive transit. Now, one thing that happens, though, is as time goes on, this condition actually changes. It doesn't last long, which is one reason why I wanted to get this into this week's content is because if we go forward by even just a couple of days here, right around the 25th or so, let's just say by the 26th, so this coming Sunday, if you count the degrees from Mercury to the end of Aquarius, you get about 7 degrees and 16. 7 degrees and what would that be? 46 arc minutes. So let's just round it to 7 degrees. And from Sun back to the beginning of Pisces, you get 8 degrees. So you add that 7 plus 8 together and you get 15 degrees. This is right around the range that if you try to go out and look at Mercury as a morning star before the sun comes up and makes the sky too bright, you begin to lose visibility to Mercury. Mercury is no longer strong enough to blast his starlight through the sunset colors. So in the ancient world, that loss of visibility spoke to Mercury losing will, losing effectiveness to bring about his own natural signification. So this is just a few days after this aspect separates, 1 or 2 days, that you see the condition of Mercury slowly deteriorate. One of the reasons why we are talking about that is because even though Mercury loses that degree-based aspect to Mars, Mercury is still the temple host providing resources to Mars through that aspectual reception. So Mercury sees the temple of Gemini, his natural temple, by trine, and is going to generally provide support. But as Mercury loses visibility himself, he also loses the ability to provide that support little by little. Now, another thing that you see happen as time goes on is Mercury gets closer and closer to Saturn. Now, before we said that this was a good thing that Mercury and Saturn were sharing the same sign. They have that co-presence. Well, that's true, but that doesn't last. And one of the reasons for that is because generally Saturn is seen as having good condition in his temple of Aquarius. But as Saturn gets closer and closer to the last degrees of Aquarius, it's like he's become exhausted. He's had to go all those, 29 degrees, and now he's just worn out. And we always have to remember, at the end of the day, Saturn is a malefic. So he always has that tendency to bring forth things that are difficult or represent hard times. And I think that's really, I know when I get tired, that's when I can be malefic. So the picture is that Mercury falls under the Piscean beams. Those beams are depressing to him. Those beams are where he finds his natural fall, the antithesis to his mental qualities. Those begin to wane from his ability. He makes this contact with Saturn. Saturn's grumpy. And then as that connection is complete by March 1st, March 2nd, by March 3rd, we see that Mercury now enters the sign of Pisces and is fully in the sign of his depression, well under the beams of the sun. And what happens is the dynamic changes radically from a really supportive air-to-air trine between Mercury and Mars, something that's really positive and constructive, to one where Mercury still sees his temple of Gemini, but now instead of seeing his temple of Gemini by trine, he sees it through a square, whole sign square aspect. So where before you might have something like ideas that help you out or information that comes through that helps you get something done or put things into action, or somebody telling you something that really motivates you. Now it's something like it could be the opposite of that. Almost, you could say something like that could go the wrong way for somebody. They could take it the wrong way. Arguments could flare up. You could get in, you could have an injury or something like that as you try to do something. The dynamic really shifts after March 3rd. So I think the main takeaway is the reason why I'm sort of projecting things forward is because it seems like the main takeaway is that it's really advantageous to strike the iron hot now while Mercury is firing on all cylinders. So I have a few suggestions that I would like to present. One of them is that good ideas have an expiration date. Put them into action now before they slip out of your mind. The reason that that is my first suggestion for this trine energy between Mercury and Mars is because I know a lot of times that sometimes I have these really good ideas, but they can slip away from you. And I think when Mercury starts to fall under those Piscean beams, those nebulous kind of sensual beams, it's as if there's some omen that says, you might not remember the idea that you had. So I think that it could be really advantageous to just strike the iron while it's hot. Remember that good ideas don't stay around forever. If there's any way you can implement them now, I would say that that is probably a really good thing to do. My second suggestion is that I think it's good for the implementation of practical ideas that can be married to your future ideal. So I would take any practical idea that you have and marry it to that Aquarian sense of what does your idealistic future look like for you? Is there anything practical that you can do that Saturn practicality meets or marries that future idealism? Now might be the time to invest money. You might have a good return, or it could be just a great time to write down your future goals in a journal. It could be a time to just note any thoughts that you have so you don't forget them. And it also may be a good time to have talks that you've been putting off or try to resolve any differences, because this trine energy is just much more conducive to that. When the square energy comes through, I don't think it'll be quite as easy at all. So this could be a good time to do all of those types of things. My third suggestion could be that the ways in which communications could be level-headed and tempered in the sign of Aquarius before Saturn completely runs out of gas could mix very, very well with Mars's ability to sacrifice. Mars is a planet that will shed his own life on the battlefield in order to protect the ones he loves. So somehow or another, you get this kind of level-headed, rational, communicative ability mixing with maybe Mars in good condition who can sacrifice something. If there's a way to bring those two together, it might be fruitful, because Jupiter often represented fruitfulness or abundance or things like that tend to grow. So I wonder if there's something you could grow with this tempered communication and with the Martian sacrifice. So that would be my three basic suggestions for this. I would love to hear if you guys have any of your own that have to do with this trine aspect. All right, so those are some of my ideas on the Mercury trine to Mars and maybe what you could do with this energy in a constructive way. I'd love to hear if you guys have any other suggestions on this energy, what you could do, maybe something I haven't thought of. That would be great to hear in the comment section. Please like, share, and subscribe on the video if you haven't already. I'll be back again Friday. We're going to take a look at the sun in the sign of Pisces, and I think that's going to be really informative as well. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you soon. Have a good one. Bye.